Welcome back. It's still Daybreak on Trust Television, and of course, this is another segment of discussion on the program. And on this segment, of course, we'll be snowballing the conversation from the Daybreak interactive session, talk about questions of whether Nigerians should continue with the importation of petroleum products or focus on the Dangote Refinery for supply. But then, three oil marketers, AYM Shafa Limited, AA Rano Limited, and Matrix Petroleum Services Limited, have asked the Federal High Court in Abuja to dismiss a suit filed by Dangote Petroleum Refinery and Petrochemicals. Now, they emphasize that the plan to monopolize the oil sector is a recipe for disaster in the country. Now, the refinery prayed the court to declare that NMDPRA was in violation of sections 317 sub 8 and 9 of the Petroleum Industry Act by issuing licenses for the importation of petroleum products. It also stated that such licenses should only be issued in circumstances where there is a petroleum product shortfall. Now, on the program this morning, we have Mr. Olabode Sowunmi. He is the CEO of Captree Limited and also the Chairman, Energy Transition Study Group, and joining us on the program this morning to discuss and, of course, provide more perspectives on the issue. Welcome to the program, Mr. Bode. Mr. Bode, what do you make of, or rather, what was your first thoughts when you saw the headline that three major oil marketers in Nigeria had taken Dangote to the court?
Okay, let me provide a bit of a context. In the last dispensation, when the PIA was in the court, I was an advisor to the Senate President. And I was his advisor on gas and power. And by virtue of that role, I was part of the discussions and
you were privy to a lot of information.
Yes, went back and forth and lobbying among people and all that. So when those things went there, sometimes I just smiled. But let me just provide some context.
Please do.
And that is just basic information. People can now make up their mind. I'm not trying to say this is right. Yes. So there are two aspects of that law which can appear a bit contradictory.
So it's Petroleum Industry Act.
Yes. Okay. With respect to that.
Okay.
The first is that aspect that they took to the law, which they took to court, which says that upon they talks about backward integration, which says that the NMDPRA may, you understand, upon a refinery setup and all that. That is where that is. But in section 32, which is where it talks about the mandates of the NMDPRA steps, it says the NMDPRA shall ensure that there's competition. So the issue now is the terminologies. In my understanding in law, when they say may, it is discretionary, which means they could and could not do it. But when they say shall, it is compulsory. So my understanding of what has gone to court by Dangote is that they are taking what is a may aspect of the law and trying to make it superior to a shall aspect of the law. So it is now left for the law itself, which in this case is the court, to give an interpretation. The rest are just semantics, because people will always make a discussion in a way that will favor them. But aside from all of that, it is important for Nigerians to note that as long as we are operating a free market society, there must be some kind of competition.
Indeed.
You understand? And our market has not evolved in a way where there's excess trust to anyone. And I'll give you an example. Perhaps the best environment for liberalizations is the telecom sector. That's the anchor baby and evidence that privatization can actually succeed. But many people seem to forget that when MTN and Econet, then as they were known, entered into the market, they started with per minute billing. And they were there for well over a year. Repeatedly, because of the cost, people were requesting that they make it per second billing. And I remember the spokesperson of MTN then saying that the equipment that they had and the software and everything could not enable them to make it per second billing until Glo came. When Glo came, because they had issues with the then President Obasanjo and so many other things, but they finally entered the market. When they entered the market, the first advert of Glo, I will never forget, was a 57-second advert by a lady who said that this advert is 57 seconds and we are paying for 57 seconds and not 1 minute. Is it not just nice that you pay for the exact number of time you use for your billing? Welcome to Glow Network. 2 weeks later, MTN and Econet started per second billing. In simple terms, it was just competition that forced the best out of them. Yeah. It is the nature of human beings. It is the nature of capitalists. It is the nature of people. There must be balance for competition. If our own interest is what matters, people should not forget that these are billionaires. These are business people. There will come a point where they will meet, where there will be meeting of minds. When they have those meeting of minds, what's the interest of the people at the bottom of the pyramid?
Indeed.
You understand? So for us, it is important that there's some kind of competition. Imported goods, by virtue of the way it is supposed to be more expensive than locally refined. So imported goods should not be a basis for threatening locally refined. In point of fact, let them bring the imported goods. As long as you are locally refining and all that, you should do something that is better. We are not privy to all the details of how the refinery works. But if there is only one person that is refining for all of us as we know it, one of the challenges that is possible, because this is just thinking ahead now, what happens if somebody upsets him? Or for whatever reason, it's a private refinery now. They decide to close shop, go to Bahamas and switch off his phone. Now, don't forget that as at that time, there will no longer be an option to import, which means that all the infrastructure for importation will cease to exist. The tank farms will have gotten moribund. The capacity with BNB Paribas and all those international banks where they can raise letters of credit, that relationship will no longer be there. So you will now be subject to this. I'm not saying, please don't get me wrong, I'm not saying he can ever do something like that. No,
of course, I totally understand.
But those are possibilities, and that comes under something that is called energy security.
But of course, Mr. Sowunmi, there's also the possibility of the NMDPRA as a regulator also ensuring that it sees to the competition that you spoke about by ensuring that more private refineries come into play. I mean, we seem to have 4 moribund refineries, government-owned refineries, which a lot of Nigerians have been clamoring for to be auctioned and handed over, to private owners or private individuals to run. So perhaps shouldn't we be looking at it from the perspective of, if a Dangote should, for instance, want or decides to travel to the Bahamas and shuts off his phone, we should be looking for other alternatives in terms of other refiners who would come up, and provide this so-called competition that we spoke about, like in the case of MTN and Glow and the Econet and all of that. Shouldn't that be where we should be looking at it, instead of considering more imports into the country of products that, now this is what Nigerians are saying, of course, for products that are refined outside Nigeria, we're not getting the benefits aside the importation of these products themselves, as opposed to a refinery that is here, brick and mortar, employing labor as much as providing for the market. What do you say to all of this?
Okay, so these are my own thoughts. You are 100% correct. 100%. In fact, if I can say 110%, if it's possible, you are correct in the sense that the NMDPRA should encourage local refiners. But until the time that the local refineries come to play, you just have to make the best of the situation. So, for example, you are the MD of Daily Trust. Some things are not working as they should. What you will do until things start to work as they should, until money comes in as they should, or until whatever comes in as they should, is make the best out of the circumstances. You are not going to start working an idealistic situation when those things are not there. The key thing is energy security.
Sure.
You understand? So in the basis of energy security, as the refiners are trying to come to play, you have to manage it. Ultimately, the truth is this: they will end up taking those licenses from them. Ultimately, in the long run.
Why do you say so?
Because as BOA comes up with his own refinery,
exactly, there's even that.
Yes, as others come up with their refinery, and as NNPC refineries come to play, those things can be triggered. You understand? Those things can be triggered. But in that
then,
situations, it will not be a conflict with Section 32. Because right now, if they trigger those laws, withdrawing their licenses, it will be a conflict with Section 32. Because don't forget that as much as Nigerians are pushing for it, if for any reason, God forbid, there comes a situation where the nation is held at ransom for energy, it is still the same regulator that we blamed. It is government that the first thing Nigerians that you ought to know. You ought to have thought about it. That is what. So, like they say, hindsight is 20/20 vision. When it has happened, people become experts on what should have been done. But when the difficulty, because it is nobody can predict the future. Sure. But when the difficult decisions need to be made, those are the things that are there. Having said that, if Nigerians still want, because ultimately this is a Nigerian thing, and there is a critical mass of Nigerians that say, damn it, you understand, we don't care, let everything just go this way, then it should be. But it must be proven that this is what Nigerians want, not just the voices of a vocal minority. Because many times we confuse vocal minority for majority. And if there's anything that will have proven it, probably the last elections in the US, because there was a minority of people whose voice were everywhere. You will have thought that they were the majority. But it's now showing that they were in the minority, they were just speaking more. So it is the same thing. The bulk of the people in the industry, what are their views? The bulk of the people that manage the supply chain, that have sustained Nigeria in the last 20 years, what are their views? The bulk of Nigerians who actually don't know, if they break these facts to them in local languages, what will be their view? All those things are important. And those are things that we need to, because it's not just about I like this or I don't like this. Fortunately for all of us, the key protagonists in all the players are not from different tribes. Whether it is Rano, whether it's Dangote, whether it is NMDPRA. So there's no case of, this person is against me because of tribal sentiments and all that, which is usually the first point of call that people play in. People must know that the soul of Nigeria is at hand.
Indeed. Now, let me build from there, Mr. Sowunmi, because looking at, from the beginning of, all of this, we saw the issue gradually move from Dangote versus the NNPC and NMDPRA to Dangote versus Ipman to Dangote versus others now. It continues to, to become messier. And perhaps your submission on whether this has not caused enough embarrassment in the face of the government to the international community, because tell me why the refinery as large as Dangote will not be seen as a blessing at this very time. Talk about the rising cost of energy. We see what's going on, between Russia and Ukraine, and how that has jacked up gas prices and all of that. What in your submissions should be the right course of action, and how would you want to see, the federal government? I know the NPC is there, but the president, the body language to exhibit to see these issues settle and die down amicably.
So the first thing is that what are the issues? Sometimes, because we talk about all this,
of course,
but when you break it down,
of course,
people seem to forget what are the issues. The issue at play is just one, and that is basically they should withdraw the licenses of the marketers. What that means technically is that you are asking all those businesses to die,
to fold,
basically to die. So, Rano, who probably has built their business across the last 20 years.
On import.
Not just on imports, you understand, on provision of services.
True.
You understand? With import as one of the options, based on what was available at the time. If Rano did not do those services, this nation will not be stable enough for Dangote to build this refinery in the first place. If Rano did not provide those services, people have gone from Rano to start up businesses in other areas who have worked with them. People have worked with Rano who are members of parliament. So Rano is a legitimate contributor to the economy of society. The fact that we want to change does not mean that we should do those things. What ought to happen is that they can have a discussion with the regulator and say, now that Dangote Refinery has come in, let there be a phased removal of the marketers. You don't do it by fiat.
Just like the way it was done to the subsidy.
Probably.
Okay, yes.
Yes, exactly. So, because we are talking about the soul of people's businesses, you are talking about the employment of people. So, there has to be a program. Say maybe 5 years, say maybe 3 years, say maybe 1 year, say maybe whatever. You're going to say, you're going to go through these milestones, and then people know that from the beginning. You don't just wake up one day and say businesses should die. What about the value that they have provided all through the years? What about Dangote Refinery probably took almost 10 years.
Indeed.
You understand? So what about all the value that we're delivering through
over
those
the
people?
course of that
Are they not also Nigerians?
Indeed.
Should they not have right to protection? Are they not part of the industry? There are services they provide and they will continue to provide that the refinery may not be able to provide. And let's not forget that it is supposed to be benefit for everybody. So that is the key point that is there. So the idea that Dangote Refinery is not giving support needs to be looked into. Because in the first place, in terms of regulatory approvals, in terms of concessions, there were so many things that happened in their favor that has never happened to anybody. All the people that are building refineries, I don't think there's any one of them that NNPC group invested cash into. Over $2 billion is a lot of money anywhere in the world.
True.
You understand? So you don't invest that kind of money in somebody you don't like.
True.
What are the issues is that there is a conflict in a business decision. And it should be seen as what it is. It is a business decision where people don't agree. And no matter how close people are, even Siamese twins,
conclusively,
they will have points where they disagree upon. So it is the fact that the issues need to be discussed among the critical stakeholders and let them agree to a way forward. It is not for us who really don't even know the fundamentals to actually be picking sides based on information that we're being manipulated by. Because at the point when they were discussing with NNPC, I'm sure it's not one day, they had discussions with NNPC to the point that they had to get them a few billions of dollars. So I'm not sure anybody was privy to all the discussions. So what were the concessions? Where were people happy? Was everybody in NNPC group happy that they were giving them that kind of money? Well, so there are many things that we don't know.
Indeed. So much to talk about, so many things known and of course unknown. But then again, I think it culminates to what Mr. Sowunmi has said, and which is the need for all of the individuals that are in play to come to perhaps dialogue and of course talk out or discuss ways to fashion out and of course move forward in the interest of Nigerians. Mr. Olabode Sowunmi, the CEO of Captree Limited and also Chairman Energy Transition Study Group, has been speaking to us about the back and forth between the Dangote Refinery and the three key marketers and players in the industry who dragged him to court. Talk about A.A. Rano, AYM Shafan, also Matrix Energy Services. Mr. Olabode Sowunmi, thank you so much for being a part of the program.
Always a pleasure.